Teo's cuts and bruises were painful but not serious. Kala gave him plantain leaves and poultice made of earth apples to put in his wounds. She also gave him a satchel full of chestnuts to boost his spirits. Teo smiled at her. It's been a long time since I had one of those. And Kala shook her old gray head. If you go on chasing mammoths, you'll not live long enough to get to enjoy them. Summer came, and a bright sun filled the valley with its warm glow. Teo watched the golden eagles soaring on warm updrafts, their sharp eyes searching for rabbits and marmots. The antelope now shared the valley with herds of small, shaggy ponies or tarpons, not much bigger than the wolf dog. One afternoon, as Teo was coming back from the slough with Ram, he looked up to see a rainbow of colors rippling across the white cliffs. Splashing yellow gave him way to blues, then purples, as the sun dipped in and out of the clouds. Then, suddenly, a bright flash of light came from the top of the limestone cliff. For a moment, it danced and flickered in the sunshine. Teo shook his head. He was puzzled. He wondered what would make such a strange light. A moment later, there it was again, sparkling and shone like a star, beckoning him. He walked out to the open field, and each time he stopped and tried to think where he had seen that light before. When he reached the foot of the cliffs, he stood quietly watching it as it flashed on and off in the sunlight. Then all at once it came back to him. He knew where it was. It was the shining stone. A broad smile crossed his face, and he forgot about everything else and started to run. Come on, Ram, he shouted, pointing to the top of the cliffs. It is our good friend Graybeard. He's here to make magic. Halfway up the cliff, Teo stopped at his little cave. There, he tied his spear over his shoulder with a leather thong, and he picked up a bag of chestnuts and tucked them into his belt. And he started to climb, and Ram followed. They went up a narrow, winding ledge, picking their way over the loose rocks and stones. Soon the path became steeper and stunted with pine bushes. Teo grabbed the crevices along the rock, and he stepped on the jutting rocks. With his fingers, he felt for the crooks and crannies that he could pull himself up with. Ram was a good climber, but at some point, his paws slipped and scraped on the uneven surface. Once, Teo had to help him up over an overhang, and twice he had to pull him up by the scruff of his neck. Frequently, they stopped to rest, and little by little they made their way up the steep limestone wall. As they came closer, Teo saw Graybeard's wrinkled face looking down over the edge of the cliff. He wondered how the old man had made such a difficult climb. Breathing hard, Teo pushed Ram over the top and then pulled himself up the rest of the way. There he was. Graybeard reached down with a bony hand and helped the boy to his feet, smiling broadly. You saw the light from way over there, didn't you? It was the shining stone. Yeah, I sure did, said Teo, glancing down at the man's blue eyes. Your magic is good, but that was a hard climb, even for the boy. Well, that's why I chose this place, said Graybeard. There is an easier way, and I'll show you later. He led Teo over to the clump of bushes, and there the old man removed a covering of pine branches to reveal a small opening leading up to an underground. "It is well hidden," said the man. "No one will find us here." They followed a narrow tunnel down into the cavern. There shafts of sunlight filtered through from above, and Teo saw the unmarked walls and the high-arched roof. On the floor were sticks of charcoal, also clumps of dry clay. A surge of excitement raced through him as he felt a new wave of joy. To become an image maker was the only thing he dreamed of. And to be taught by the master, well, that's more than he could have ever hoped. "My hands and my eyes are ready to begin," he said. "Ah, my friend, don't be in such a hurry," the old man bent over, stifling a cough. And he continued, "You'll be a better pupil after we've eaten." Teo forced a smile. Food meant nothing to him at this point. But he didn't want to press the old man. He took the bag of chestnuts from his belt and handed it to Graybeard. "Kala gave me these," he said. "I've been saving them for you." Graybeard opened the skin sack and peered in, and took out the shiny red nuts and held them up in his thin fingers, smiling. "Chestnuts are not plentiful," he said. "It'll be good to taste these again." Then they sat on the floor of the cave and ate a part of a roasted antelope leg Graybeard he had brought with him. They roasted the chestnuts and cracked them open between two stones to pick out the sweet meat. Meanwhile, Ram gnarled on a leg bone, which still had some meat on it, then curled up into the corner and went schleppin' time. Bright sunlight came through the opening and reflected off the ash-gray walls of the cavern. Graybeard got to his feet. He lifted his thin arms over his head and stretched. Then he looked down at the boy. "Now it's time to begin." He took a slate stone from the deerskin pouch. "When we were together before, I showed you how to rough outline an image. We drew a bison. Now we're going to try something harder." So he handed Teo the stone. Teo took it and studied the carved engraving. It was the figure of a reindeer, with branches and antlers, thin, long legs. And he knew it would not be easy. He picked up one of the chalks and stepped up to the wall. It was clean and unmarked, and he ran the palm of his hand over the surface, feeling the smoothness. Then, lifting his other hand, he made bold strokes, starting with the shoulder and back. The old man stopped him immediately, shaking his head. "That's all wrong. I told you. First you make a sketch with charcoal. Black is better. And start with an outline of the body and the head." Teo groaned inwardly. In his excitement, he had already forgotten the first lesson the old man had taught him. He picked up some charcoal and began again. The old master watched for a while. Then he reached out and stopped the boy again. "No! You draw with short, choppy strokes. Let your hand go free. Let it glide over the walls. There's plenty of room. Reach out as far as you can." As he followed Graybeard's instructions, he found his drawing was easier and faster. He smiled with a quick feeling of satisfaction. Just a few words from the master made a big difference. Graybeard nodded. "You are learning, my friend. It takes time, but you are learning." Teo drew the outline of two more reindeers before the old man stopped him. Now I'm going to show you something else, said Graybeard. And he took another graven stone from his leather pouch and handed it to Teo. On it was the sketch of a rhino. Then he brushed his long fingers across the wall. Looky here! When you draw the rhino, use this bulge as the high part of his back. The hollow place then becomes the dark area where the head meets the shoulder. Teo did as he was told, and the outline of his large rhino, when he finished, he looked back with wonder. Look! It begins to look alive! Graybeard picked up the charcoal. Now, if you wish to show many animals together, you outline the first one, and then you draw a row of head and legs, one after another. Graybeard sketched a bison on the wall, and then drew a series of heads and legs close behind. Again, Teo was surprised. With a few quick strokes, the old master had created an entire herd of bison. He could almost see the flashing eyes and hear the pounding hooves. It is like magic, he said. Now I will try. The old man shook his head. He walked the little cavern, stretching his arms over his head. That's enough for now. Tomorrow I'm headed to the lake people, and when I return I will show you how to paint with mixed colors. For that we will need some fish, oil, and some animal fat, blood, and eggs and honey. The following morning, Graybeard took Teo west along the top of the cliffs until they came to a narrow path leading down to the bottom. See, this side is not so steep, said the old man. It's much easier to climb. They walked across the valley until they came to the river. And when they were ready to part, the boy said, Thanks, GB. I'll make sure I work hard to make that bison come to life on the cave wall. Then someday maybe I'll be even close, nearly as good as you. The old man shrugged. Maybe even better. Ha! No one can be better than you, but I'll try. The old man walked away, coughing heavily. Teo called back. Will you be back soon? Do not be impatient. Teo caught the flicker of a smile. You have plenty to do while I'm gone. In the days that followed, Teo practiced drawing in between and collecting materials for the next day's lesson. He searched along the dry stream bed for a saucer-shaped stone that could be used to mix the paints, and he scooped wet clay out of the brook and